Hello and welcome to On Books. This is Chris, and this week we are going to look at Essentialism, the Disciplined Pursuit of Less by Greg McKeown. If you've never listened to On Books before, cool, welcome. And it doesn't matter if you've read the book yet. That's why we're here. We're going to get a good overview, some of my favorite parts, some of the takeaways. If you have read the book, also cool, welcome. And we're going to go through, this will be like a review or a rereading. Maybe I'll share some things that you missed, all that kind of stuff. So that's where we're at. Welcome to On Books. Essentialism is the book of the week. If I had to summarize the advice of this book in one sentence, I would say it would be this line. If it isn't a clear yes, then it's a clear no. Yep, I love it, right? If it isn't a clear yes, then it's a clear no. Think about how useful this one line is. I've also heard it said on the internet as, if it isn't a fuck yes, then it's a fuck no, which I think is also a pretty good way to think about it. But, just look at the things you do each day, like how many tasks do you do each day just because you feel like you should, or they're part of your routine. You've always been doing it that way. You're afraid to say no or stand up for yourself, right? You're just like, okay, yes. But if it isn't a fuck yes, then it should be a fuck no. It's the kind of thing it's worth writing over your bed or like looking at every morning and just kind of balancing yourself in that world. Is this a hell yes? Or is this, nope, not going to do this, right? It's this mindset that will guide you towards being an essentialist. This is what the book's about. Doing only what's important each day and ultimately in life, just getting in the habit, making a habit of doing hell yeses. Yeah? Okay. So that's the goal of the book Essentialism. Less but better. Here's McKeown in his own words describing less but better and where he got the idea from. Less but better.
So you can take that design ethic. The design ethic, by the way, came from Dieter Rams, the head designer at Braun for 35 years. And he summarized all of his life's learnings into 10 principles, summarized those even further to one, and then summarized that into 3 words, less but better. And he applied it to the design of products and superbly successful in doing so. But I want to make the case that we can take that same design ethic and use it to great advantage in our careers, in our leadership, and also in our lives writ large.
So what's in the book? All right, well, the hardcover book comes in around 246 pages, and there's quite a bit of full-page diagrams and drawings along the way. So it doesn't really feel like that dense, like much of a read. It's really fluid. It goes quick. It's enjoyable to read. And the book itself is divided into 4 parts. So there's these 4 parts. They all begin with the letter E for some reason. And the first part, I'll just read through the 4 parts. There's essence, explore, eliminate, and execute. These are the 4 steps in kind of McKeown's approach to getting you to first think about what it means to be an essentialist, and then exploring the most important parts of your life, eliminating the crap that you aren't hell yesing, getting rid of all that hell no stuff, and then executing, so tips to progress closer and focusing, going from a million different directions, a half an inch, to one or a few directions, totally focus and nailing it, right? In here, he has tips on how to say no and tips on how to edit, which I think is one of the better chapters of the book, and we'll go into that in just a bit. So what I'm going to cover in the book is the main gist of the book, the overview of the 4 main parts. I'll read some quotes and stories from the book, and I'll give you some definitions of the essentialist versus the non-essentialist. And I feel like this is kind of like the main kind of meditation of the book, a way of pulling yourself into looking at these 2 people you could be, the essentialist versus the non-essentialist, and we'll get into that. So Essentialism, the book, it starts with a story of a Silicon Valley founder of a startup who finds himself stretched too thin. His company had just been acquired by a larger company, and now in his new role, he said yes to too many requests without really thinking about it. His calendar is full of tasks, but he doesn't feel like he's getting anything meaningful done. He's just really stretched thin. So in the midst of all this chaos, one of his advisor comes to him and gives him this advice. He says, stay here, but do what you would do as a consultant and nothing else. Oh, and don't tell anyone. And he takes that advice, and that's exactly what he does. He does exactly like the most necessary parts of what his job would be. And he at first he was a little bit shy about enforcing this. But soon after, he was surprised to find that, people may have been a little bit disappointed at first when he was, saying, hey, saying no to things. But after a while, he found that they would respect his honesty, which led him to the realization to ask himself the question, is this the very most important thing I can be doing with my time and resources right now? What a great question, right? Is this the very most important thing that you should be doing with your time right now, listening to this podcast? Whoa, I don't know. That's deep. But yes, I think probably because we're learning together. It's a great question. It's funny because I just got this advice from one of my advisors this week, and he was telling me how he had that written above his bed, right? And this comes back to the whole idea of essentialism being a meditation. You have to put this stuff and look at it every day and live it, right? And so I challenge you, write that down. Is this the very most important thing? Put that by your desk, or put that when you wake up in the morning, and really kind of reevaluate. I mean, that's what Essentialism, this book, is all about. Constantly reevaluating and making decisions and focusing. So a big part of Essentialism is finding the priorities, right? Or finding the main priority of the day or of your life, right? A good quote from the book: just because you're invited to a meeting doesn't seem like a good enough reason to attend. And one of my favorites: if you don't prioritize your time, someone else will. Whoa, I feel that one. I feel that one because I've had my Google Calendar shared for quite a while. And I also sometimes use this app Calendarly, where other people can schedule with me without asking my permission, right? And one way this will play out is that I'll wake up and I'll see that I have all these meetings that I didn't even approve, right? I had to work to kind of fix the system a little bit. But you're essentially, if you're giving someone your Google Calendar, or you're just saying yes to every meeting, if your friend wants to get brunch, but you don't think it's the best use of your time, but you're just saying yes because, I can't say no to that person, right? All of these are examples of people stealing your time, or you're letting people steal your life. You're letting other people prioritize your life with your permission, right? There's a quote I like, William Penn. I think that's the dude that founded or invented Pennsylvania. And I always remember this quote. It's time is what we want most, but we use the worst. So true, right? So in order to get control over your life, you have to get control over your time. That's what Essentialism is about. It doesn't mean overworking or over-controlling. It means saying no when something is not essential. Again, it means saying no when something is not essential. And it means finding the right routines that will serve you and in your goals. So it means knowing your goals and focusing on your goals. That's Essentialism. I think now it would be helpful for me to define Essentialism in contrast to non-essentialism. And McEwen does this in each chapter. He'll say, this is what essentialism is, this is what it's not. A non-essentialist thinks, I have to do something, whereas an essentialist thinks, I choose to do something. Think about how powerful that is. Saying, I have to do something versus I choose to do something, right? You can think of the things in your day as impinging upon your time and your priorities, right? Oh man, I have to go to this wedding, right? I have to go to this meeting. If you're just saying the word, I choose to. I mean, there's things we have to do that you might not want to do, right? But if you choose to go to this meeting because you care about the project and your job, just rethinking and reframing that is so powerful, right? So this is one big difference in how an essentialist thinks. A non-essentialist also thinks, how can I fit it all in? It's all important. How can I do it all? Whereas the essentialist is going to say, only a few things matter. So what are the trade-offs and how do I decide? A non-essentialist reacts to what is most pressing, right? A non-essentialist is reacting. A non-essentialist is saying yes without really thinking about the consequences. What do you think the essentialist does? The essentialist says no to everything but the essential, trying to make your default no in a polite way, and I'll give some tips for that. But no as a default, only to the essential, say yes. And the non-essentialist takes on too much and feels out of control. Whereas the essentialist chooses carefully and feels in control. So again, the essentialist says, I choose to. The essentialist says no as the default and only says yes to the essential. An essentialist feels in control and does great work because of it. So McEwen spends about the first 100 or so pages talking about what essentialism is, what it isn't, what priorities are, how to focus, all that kind of stuff. And it's about page 120 when he starts to talk about, which is one of my favorite chapters, this idea of editing and deciding and cutting things out. And that's one of my biggest challenges, is saying no to commitments and to people, right? So I'm going to give some tips now on avoiding commitment traps, and in a bit I'll give some tips on saying no. So let's get started. Avoiding commitment traps. So over 7 pages or so, McEwen gives us tips on avoiding what he calls commitment traps. 2 of my favorite from the chapter include pretend like you don't own it yet. So this is a good tip. If you have something and you're debating whether you want it in your life, I mean, it could just be like a t-shirt, right? Or a couch or something physical. Ask yourself, how much do I value this object? As in, how much would I pay to obtain it if I didn't own it? Or think about it as a project that you're on or a commitment that you made. How much would, if I wasn't involved already, how hard would I work to go to this thing? Commitment trap number 2 to avoid, get over the fear of waste. So now, picture this. You buy a ticket to go to Miami for $100 for the weekend, right? And then something comes up local that's amazing, right? Maybe your friend's having a party and you're like, I don't really want to go to Miami anymore, but, I already bought the ticket. I feel obligated to go. I don't want to lose the money. McEwen would say, that's bull, right? He'd say, avoid, that's a commitment trap. That's all in your head. You need to let go, just eat the money, right? And do the thing that's going to serve you the best. Get closer to how you're going to be great and vibrate in the world. And that's what he's talking about. Get over the waste. I think this is also applicable to jobs. I had a friend that worked at RGA, and he would talk about, how they would commission lots of different contractors to do work. And then a lot of that work you wouldn't necessarily use, but you need to kind of overspend and then edit after there. I think that's true for writing scripts, for writing, lots of different jobs. You need to kind of overextend yourself. And so just get over the fear of like making every single penny have to count all the time. And I think that's a commitment trap you want to avoid, according to McEwen. McEwen talks about execution, and he quotes this Abraham Lincoln, this quote that I love. He says, Abraham Lincoln once said, "Give me 6 hours to chop down a tree, and I will spend the first 4 sharpening the axe." The word decision is an important part of essentialism, because to focus on the necessary, to focus on the hell yes and get rid of the hell no, you are going to have to decide. The Latin root of the word decision, the cis or the sid part, it actually means to cut or to kill. So that's cool. That's important because when you're deciding something, you are cutting something else, hopefully, right? I mean, if you're getting out of one relationship into another relationship, hopefully you're ending that other relationship, or we know what happens, right? So focusing, deciding, to kill, to cut. That's what a great editor does. Jack Dorsey, the CEO of Twitter and Square, he talks about what a great editor does. He had this speech at Stanford University where he's the CEO, and he said, the CEO is actually the chief editor of the company. That's what CEO stands for. That's what he said. And when asked to clarify, what do you mean, Jack? He said, well, there are thousands of things that we could be doing here, but there are only one or two that are important. As the editor, I am constantly taking these inputs and deciding the one or intersection of a few that makes sense to what we're doing. So in that respect, when Jack Dorsey talks about being an editor, it's not someone who just says no to things, but by editing, you're subtracting and adding value to Twitter. By doing less, you're actually getting more. I'm going to close out here with some tips on saying no, because the whole time during the podcast, looking at essentialism, I've said we're deciding less but better. We're saying no to things, but saying no is hard. And luckily, McEwen gives us 8 tips on how to say no. I'm going to run through these pretty quickly, and you can look for some more notes on my website afterwards. So check this out. Number 1, tips on saying no. The awkward pause. When a request comes in, just pause for a moment and count to 3 before deciding. It's so easy to just say, oh yeah, and then go, what did I just say? Right? So build in that awkward pause. Hopefully try to not make it awkward. Just build in a pause is the point. Number 2, the soft no or no but. So imagine someone asks you for coffee, but you don't want to go. So here's an example reply using no but. So you could say, yeah, I'm consumed with writing my book right now, but I would love to get together once the book's finished. So let me know if we can get together at the end of the summer. So this reply gives you a bit of a buffer and kind of puts the onus on them to reply back to you and follow up. Number 3, let me check my calendar and get back to you. It's always a good one. Sometimes people ask me over text or in person, and to be honest, sometimes I really just don't know if I'm available. So it always gives me a buffer to, and it's pretty honest. Actually, I do need to check my calendar, so I'll do that. Number 4, use email bounce backs. So, you can have one of those kind of vacation replies or auto replies and say, I'm really busy with a book, or I'm really busy working on this project, or I'm away, something like that. Number 5, say, yes, what should I deprioritize? So this would be something you could use at work. Okay, cool. Yeah, I'll do that, but I need to say no to something else. Number 6, I don't like this one, but say it with humor. Hey, do you want to go get coffee? Nope. Yeah, that's ridiculous. I feel like that's like you're not going to keep the friend. Maybe there's a more tactful way to do that, but I'm not working it. Number 7, use the words, you're welcome to X, I am willing to Y. So imagine someone asks you for a ride, but you don't want to give them a ride. So you could say, yeah, you're welcome to borrow my car, and I'm willing to make sure the keys are here for you. So in this way, you're kind of saying, no, I'm not going to give you a ride, but here's the alternative. And finally, number 8, I can't do it, but X might be interested. So trying to delegate or trying to, suggest someone else nicely is a way to say no.
Why is it that otherwise intelligent people end up getting tricked by the trivial? This is my question to you. It's not an insignificant question, because other people just as smart as you, as us, just as driven, just as thoughtful, just as careful, somehow seem to end up where they didn't intend to end up. And that is more than intellectual curiosity, although it is that to me. It's also just a question we ought to ask about because, we just get the one wild and precious life after all. So how do we design our choices really matters.
All right, so this has been another episode of On Books. This week's book again was Essentialism. I have notes for the book up at my site, castig.org, and you can see the notes, you can see some quotes, and some extra little tidbits that I didn't include in the podcast. If you like the podcast, I'll have more books coming up in the future, so you can subscribe for free with iTunes. So just go to iTunes, to the store, search for On Books. I'd really appreciate that. That would be awesome. So yeah, pick it up, check it out, less but better. And if it isn't a hell yes, then hell no.